Good evening, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the South Haven City Council. It is Monday, February the 20th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Invocation this evening will be begun by Father Richard of St. Basil's Catholic Church. And good evening, Father. Thank you for
Good evening,
being here
Mr.
again.
Mayor, honorable members, fellow people of South Haven. As we come together this evening, let us silence ourselves. Bring us into the presence of our Creator. And as we do so, let us hear from the book of Sirach. All wisdom comes from God. And as we think about that simple line, let us acknowledge our need for wisdom and use it to silence our doubts and help with our needs, to help with lonely, that we become helpful with honesty and humility. Let us bow our heads. Grant, we pray, Almighty God, that always pondering spiritual things, may count in both word and deed that which is pleasing to you. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Richard. And now, if you're willing and able, join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call. Megan.
Jeff Arnold.
Here.
Wendy Onuki.
Here.
Joe Reeser.
Here.
Steve Schlock. George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins.
Here.
Scott Smith.
Here.
Make a
to
motion.
excuse Councilmember Schlock.
Second.
We got a motion, we got a second to excuse Councilmember Schlock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, he is excused. That takes us to the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. It's approved. Consent agenda items A through D, and I'm supposed to make a note that on item A, that the vote on food trucks has been received in the minutes. The packet is going to be updated, just got missed. It's going to be updated. It's been updated, uploaded later tonight. Get that
That's
all right?
correct.
That's all, just so people are aware.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through D.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Arnold.
Yes.
Onuki.
Yes.
Reeser.
Yes.
Sleeper.
Yes.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. And before we get to new business, we had a surprise visitor. Sheriff Dan Abbott came by, not to pick anybody up tonight, but to just say hello. So, Sheriff, you want to come up and just, one, say hi? I don't know if everyone in this room is familiar with your face, but
Well,
welcome.
it's just that time of the year again. I try and make my rounds to all the cities, villages, and townships, which usually takes about 4.5 months. I'm getting started a little earlier this year. I normally do it in the summer months, but my summers are getting busier and busier, especially with 3 grandkids. So no, I just come around so everybody can see my face. And just as a reminder, if you folks ever have any questions, concerns, or anything like that, I've got an open door at our office. Goes with the public too. If you guys ever have anything you need to get with me on, give me a call. Secretary will plug you in my schedule, and I'll make sure that I'll get you in and answer your phone calls or emails.
And you are great at that. I will just say you're very valuable in that regard, so
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Great communication. So, anybody have any questions for the Sheriff on this surprise visit?
I know we always appreciate your office's support when we have fireworks.
Yep, it's a good partnership. We got a good partnership with your drug guys and Shays, and it's been a good relationship. Of course, I grew up 10 miles over and grew up in this community, so I can tell you my heart's in this community, so Van Buren in general, so.
It shows. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks.
Come again. All right, that takes us to new business. We're going to South Haven Area Emergency Services Annual Report by Executive Director, Mr. Brandon Hens. Good evening, Brandon.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Thanks again for the opportunity to come in and just go over some of the highlights of Shays 2022. It was a busy year, as it has been the last 10. We ended up with a record 2,659 calls this past year, so we were hopping. That averages out to 7 to 8 calls a day. And of course, we serve around 97 square miles between South Haven City, South Haven Township, Geneva Township, and Casco Township. So our folks are hopping. And but this past year, we had a couple sizable highlights. We were able to improve our ISO rating to a 3.5. So we're a Class 3 department in the city, which directly affects home insurance and homeowners insurance rates. So hopefully we'll all see a drop here once that gets established and through the insurance companies. We did put a new ambulance in service. We improved our training and accountability. We did promote a training officer position. We created a training officer position. This past year, the fire service, Michigan State Fire Service is requiring continuing education credits for firefighters now. In the past, you took your class and you were a member of a department, you did your trainings every year. So along with our EMS continuing education credits, we also need to get fire service continuing education credits, which was becoming a hassle, and we weren't sure how we were going to keep up with all that, with everything else that was going on. So we promoted a training officer position. It's worked out perfectly. He had a list about this long when he started, and he's made about that much of a dent in it. So very fortunate for that. That created a vacancy on shift, so we promoted one of our paid-on-call firefighter paramedics, Johanna Quinn, to a full-time position. One of our firefighter paramedics, Dawn Hintz, had retired, which created another vacancy, which we had hired a firefighter paramedic from the Hamilton area, Corey Capel, and he started probably about a month and a half ago. And he's a good kid, young kid, and him and Johanna have both been doing great. Shays was recognized as a patriotic employer by the U.S. Department of Defense. One of our fire inspector, EMT basics, Rex Hayner, is currently deployed with the National Guard, and hopefully return safe and sound by the tail end of the summer. So the Department of Defense recognizes patriotic employers, and they came to the station and gave us an award for that, which was pretty nice. We added 4 new paid-on-call members to the roster, and we also had 5 past Shays and South Haven Fire Department members memorialized on this Michigan Firefighter Memorial Wall in Roscommon, Michigan. I won't keep you too long. I'll try to keep it short, but I won't make any promises. I'm very proud of the department, and I'll just keep going on about it. So if you feel the need, just tell me to stop.
You're good. Brag. That's good. It's good stuff.
Our 2022 recruitment, we hit hard out of the gate, which with Rex being deployed, it kind of put a little bit of a hindrance on that because he was kind of leading that charge. And we were, going to our area schools, not only South Haven schools, but our area schools as well, and just to try to start that culture with our kids, all the way from our fire prevention kids that we're visiting in the schools to the 9th graders to the 10th graders. The Van Buren ISD puts on a awesome firefighter course and an EMT basic course currently, and just trying to let the kids know that that's there and it's an option. And we think it's working. We hope it's working. We actually have had a few of our full-time members that took those courses when they were in high school. So fire prevention 2022, we hit the schools hard again this past year. Our annual fun fair went very well. Our training, we were hitting the training as hard as we could, and having that training officer position also gets things a little more. We've always had a good schedule. We have a monthly training the second Tuesday of every month, but he's able to work in a couple here, a couple there. He's there, on a consistent basis all week. That is, some of our paid-on-call members that are working, 8 to 5 jobs, they can still come in and hit him up after 5 o'clock because he works till 6 every night. Hey, I need to get this, I need to get that kind of thing. So that's worked out great. 2022 budget information. Our funding sources, as you all know, we're an authority, so we get funding sources from Casco Township, City of South Haven, Geneva Township, and South Haven Township, Van Buren County ambulance tax, and ambulance user fees, or ambulance billings, I should say. Our last 2022 budget revenues were $3,102,000, and our expenditures were right around $3,102,000. So we stretch every dollar as far as we can, and we're pretty proud of that. I wouldn't call us frugal, but frugal. Very responsible with the money that our taxpayers do provide us with. Personnel hours this last year, we had over 47,000 hour total payroll hours. Average response time in South Haven City was 4 minutes and 3 seconds this past year. And average for the 97 square miles that we cover was 5 minutes and 50 seconds. And that's considering our furthest point to the southeast is 24th and 681, and our furthest point to the northeast is around 111th and 60th Street. So once you average them all up, a 5 minute 50-second response time we're pretty proud of. 2022 response, we responded to 820 medical calls in the city, 299 fire calls, to a total of almost 1,200 total. And as I've mentioned before, fire calls encompass a lot of different things: gas leaks, gas smells, electric lines down, trees down on electric lines. If we perform an extrication at a vehicle accident, but it also does, structure fires, grass fires. So we don't have 300 house fires in town. I'm pretty sure you'd all know about that and wonder why we weren't doing a better job at fire prevention. We provided 906 ALS calls, advanced life support calls this past year, 418 basic life support calls, and 344 of those responses were non-transports. Alarm time of the day, 7A to 3P is our busiest times. If you were to take the whole 24-hour, it just makes a camel hump from 9A to 9P. Calls start coming in and they start trailing off, right? I mean, you can just set up. That's something that's been consistent year to year. Don't know why. Our alarm day of the week this last year, our busiest day was Thursdays. Last year was Wednesday. You'd figure it was a Friday or a Saturday, but around the station, one of the biggest things that I'm proud of, I'm proud of our whole department, but the pride that our members take in our equipment and our facilities, any time of the month, any time of the day, we had a visit from the governor this last year, not in 2022, 2021, and we didn't have to get anything ready. We didn't have to run out and sweep the bays out. We didn't have to run out and mop everything's already to that point. That we might touch a few things up here and there, but very proud of that, very proud of the care that our members take of our facilities and equipment. There's a lot of extra that goes on there. 4-year call history, as you can see, it's been increasing annually. We're right about on tap, right around the same point as we were last year on calls so far into this year. Our inspection crew this last year, there's a very, very brief list of the tasks that are performed by our deputy chief and fire inspectors. 147 fire pre-plans, 141 code inspections, 642 short-term rentals, 20 site plan reviews, Knox box repairs and updates, food vendor inspections, hydrant flow tests. They're out there beating the streets every day and really doing a good job, and it shows. We've had a few instances this past year. For instance, Black River Tavern, we had a fire there late last year, and that was, it was a suppressed area. The sprinkler put the fire out, essentially, which suppression isn't meant to totally put out a fire. It's to contain it until the fire department can get there and extinguish it the rest of the way. It put it the whole way out, and that, that building wasn't suppressed. That was actually took place back when City Manager Hosier's dad was a member of our department. He pushed hard for that to get suppressed because there's such a huge loss possibility in our downtown areas. So anytime we've got any new construction going on down there, we really try to harp on that. Because that was a nasty night, and that would not have been a fun night. Water safety, as you know, with our water life jacket loaner boards that are community supported, with tons of help, tons of support from the city, obviously, as well, but also from Pam Ford, who does great work in our community. And all of the pictures in this report as well. Much credit to Tom Renner. He comes to a lot of our calls and documents a lot of them. It makes it a lot easier for making up a report as well, because it gives me a lot of stuff to reference. But no, like I said, I wanted to keep it brief. Like Deputy Abbott Sheriff Abbott had mentioned, was born and raised in this area too, and I'm very proud of the department that we have, very proud of the members that we have, very proud of what we do and how we do it. And so I appreciate you all letting me come to brag about us a little bit. Answer any questions?
I'll jump in real quick. One, I just want to thank you for creating that culture, because if anyone pays attention to kind of what's going on just around the state, around the country, a lot of these agencies are short right now. I mean, you don't want to be short an ambulance driver when you have an emergency. So we're very fortunate that you're on top of that. You've got that culture. Your staff kind of feeds on it, which is fun to see when you're out there, with men and women of your department. So community should be aware of that you're fostering that sort of an environment. So
we're trying, and I can't take. I mean, we have, and I could give you instances upon instances. Is that you and Kate are more familiar with than the when if we are dispatched to an ambulance call, if we, depending on staffing, off duty, come back to cover the station in case there's another ambulance call, which is frequently. Off duty, that member might have just worked the 24-hour shift the day before and been up all night, came in to cover that call again, or came in to cover the call the next day, then works the next day, and they're up all night. So it takes a special person and special members to do that, and they don't do it for the money. I mean, you need to get paid for coming into town and working, but when it really hits the fan and comes down to it, our members just pile on and do an excellent job, and I'm very, very proud of them. And I can't say enough for the support from City Council and from our other entities that we serve and from our community. It means a lot. It means a lot to us.
we appreciate you as well. So
I've got just a real quick story. So I was listening to National Public Radio, and there's a story that came out of, I believe, the Interlochen station up in near Traverse City, and it was talking about an innovative use of drones that was being done by South Haven Emergency Services. And I thought, this is on, national news, and it was talking about our local Shays. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's got some good people and some innovative people that look for those unique answers to some problems that we have. So.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, we have some brilliant people on our staff, they shore me up. I mean, we have very brilliant is just the right word for it. There's always, and I shouldn't say off the wall idea. That's not the right term for it, but out of the box thinking that'll come in. You know what? Yeah, that's a great idea, and the drone was one of those. And yeah, that's great. Let's look into it. And we've got some other things that we're working on now that, I think are going to be exciting. As we go into 2023, and much credit there again to Tom Renner, because he has all the news contacts and journalism contacts, and he'll push some of our stuff out, and he'll send me links that it's aired like in the Interlochen area. I haven't seen that one, but it's pretty cool to see.
very good.
I have just a quick question. Do you find that the department has trouble identifying house numbers very often?
This probably ever since I've been on, we've offered the green life signs, and we make them and just sell them at cost, and that has saved a lot of late night searching for addresses, and there's a lot of them out there. We're pretty fortunate that a lot of the members in our community realize that, and I haven't been on shift for almost 3 years now, but I would almost say probably if we responded to 10 EMS calls or fire calls, probably 5 to 6 of them had those signs. There are some every now and then that get a little bit tricky, but our inspection crew have been kind of on that and you know, mentioning to business owners and homeowners, hey, you got to get this marked out a little bit better so we can see it. It's in the daytime it might be visible, but at nighttime
Right.
it's a little trickier when you got lights bouncing off all the buildings and you're shining the spotlight in everybody else's house trying to find the address on the house. So yeah, somewhere up front clearly marked, you know, even if you didn't have a green life sign, just right on the front of the house, right by the front door, somewhere easy to see.
Thank you.
And on a related note, as we get to the upcoming spring planting season, please don't hide your fire hydrant.
Yes.
3 feet around, right? And
Yes,
people plant
yep.
ornamental grasses and hide the fire hydrant is not recommended,
Yep.
right?
Yep. We've
Please.
these past out of the 900 hydrants in the Shaw's, we probably run into that deliberate hiding the fire hydrant. I don't know, 5 to 6 times.
Oh my gosh.
But they hide them good.
Bad game.
So yeah.
Yeah, so,
Piggyback further on that, on our CAD system for dispatch, if you have an ADL on your vehicle, and Sergeant Hathaway can piggyback off this, our dispatch can watch where his car's rolling. If it's not marked, it shows on our scene the addresses, and they can tell you have to right in front of the house right now, turn in. So we've got it actually in our CAD system now, to where if you got ADLs in your vehicle, we can guide you right in.
Oh, that's nice.
So, and the way to, and it would even go further on our AVLs on our CAD system, they can actually, our dispatchers can actually call out a pursuit now, because it's within a second or two of the vehicle, so I've personally been involved in pursuits where I'm like, you got me, yep, okay, and they'll call out my pursuit for me, so I don't have to concentrate on where I'm at, so.
very good.
The public knows that we have it at our disposal.
Wonderful.
It
Thank
is
you.
that accurate too. I mean,
Wow.
hang a right and you're there. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty pinpoint.
Very good. I feel safer again. I appreciate it. I always do when you come here.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank everybody back at station, as always. All right, everybody, City Council be asked to approve Resolution 2023-07, a resolution appointing the members of the Board of Review, rate of compensation, and meeting schedule for 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-07, a resolution appointing the members of the Board of Review, rate of compensation, and meeting schedule for 2023.
Second.
Motion, second. Kate?
This is our standard operating procedure for Board of Review. We have a lot of names coming back. These are Board of Review members who have to receive training, if not annually. So this is no change from years past.
Very good. Thanks. Council questions?
What do they review?
Your assessment,
Okay.
your tax assessment, if you wish to dispute it.
Okay.
Very good. We've got a motion, we've got a second to approve Resolution 2023-07. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's approved. Next, City Council be asked to receive a presentation from Morovia Analytics regarding the short-term rental economic impact report. I know Jim's here. Good evening. Welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Certainly my pleasure. Mayor, council, city manager, it's good to see you all.
We'll just get this started.
Again, we appreciate it. This was our project for you. I know this was not an easy project, having read a ton of information from a lot of different sources, and I'm sure you found that out. But this council's request was to help us understand the economic impacts of our short-term rentals here in the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And Mr. Roby, this is not the final product. You had You wanted to dot a few more i's and cross a few more t's. Is that my
Right,
understanding?
and we should have
Okay.
that for you in the next
Yeah.
couple days.
Okay.
It was just, we've been working on this literally, and I keep calling Kate and the mayor and saying, we thought about this a little bit more, and so we just finally, as every grad student knows, you've got to sometimes quit doing research and start writing. That's what we're doing, so.
Okay.
So please. So as the mayor said, that, the city had a request for proposals that went out in late 2022. We responded. In this process, we worked closely with South Haven leadership. And I, in particular, want to call out Ryan from your shop, who was very helpful in getting us data. The assessor was very helpful. We worked closely with Jim, getting good advice. Jen at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, sorry, it's late in the day. And I really do want to comment on, I think we talked to most of you. We talked with many of the people here. We talked to people pro and con. That all affected our thinking. And in much of the stakeholder comment will be clear in the report, less so tonight for brevity, but it was and it's well detailed in the report. So next slide, please. And I really want to be clear about this. We're providing estimates of economic impact. There's no way I can ever go downtown and go to the living room or Clementine's and say, this person's here because of STRs and those sorts of things. So we're providing what we think are estimates of this, and that's the same thing if I was working in Montcalm County looking at the economic impact of wind farms. We'd say these are estimates because it just is never impossible to empirically document it. And I really want to be clear about this. So we're really talking about the economics of this, but we recognize that there's a huge emotional impact that we're not able to capture here. We know that this is really, really important. And so, we try to capture it in stakeholder interviews and those sorts of things and within the body of the report, but we weren't able to quantify the amenity or disamenity of people's feelings on this. Also important to know that we captured this for a single year. So this was essentially based in 2022. But the impacts are reoccurring each year. They will vary based on number of visitors, number of STRs permitted, number of STRs operating, and all sorts of other things. But any scope and scale change, and I know you're thinking about, and that's part of the discussion, will affect these estimates. But so these are a point-in-time estimate that will, some level of that will reoccur in 2023 and 2024, but we weren't charged with estimating that. The inputs and outputs are annualized, meaning that we report them. And so some of the numbers that you'll see is say, well, that's way too low. That's because these are annual numbers. Bureau of Economic Analysis looks at jobs not as part-time or full-time, but merely as jobs. And so when you see the report, you'll see in there that we've done some seasonality stuff, knowing that employment will be much higher in July than it will be in January. But also note that some of those jobs may be held by more than one person. And so these jobs aren't necessarily, if you saw 1,100 jobs in there in July, that doesn't mean 1,100 people are working. That means there's 1,100 positions working. And that may be somebody that starts at Julia's and opens and makes coffee and then serves at Clementine's for lunch. And maybe works somewhere else for dinner. So it could be multiple jobs one person holds. And so these are jobs the way the federal government, Bureau of Economic Analysis, looks at. We know that the actual trends that you'll see are bumpy between months and within months. And so when you look at the occupancy levels, and we used AirDNA for that, you'll see maybe in January a 33% occupancy. We know that on a Wednesday night in January, it may not be 33% of STRs are occupied, but on the weekend during icebreakers or something like that, we know that it will be. And so, again, these are averages leading to estimates. The economic impact estimates are for zip code 49090. That was the best we could do with the IMPLAN model, the nationally recognized model we used. And one of the things that I think I want to be really clear about is that wherever possible, including this IMPLAN model, everything was locally based. We used local data as much as we could, and we tried to fit it and form it when we couldn't. You'll see some estimates from MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and we tried to tailor those to our understanding. 4 components in the study. 3 are economic in nature and create a net impact. We look at visitor spending, operations spending, the opportunity costs, and part of what we heard was, well, if these weren't, so this really does affect our thinking, if these weren't STRs or permitted as STRs, they would be something else. And so we worked to think through what that might be, and then we put those into the in-plan model. That's that kind of inserted bullet. If they weren't STRs, but for being STRs, what would be the alternative uses? And I'll explain more about that in a moment. We estimated these using an in-plan model, one of the 2 best models, and this is the one that we could get down to the zip code level with. The 4th component is to estimate the impacts on parcel prices based on STRs and those sorts of things, and I'll explain a little bit about that. Again, we worked closely with staff, we worked with the CVB, we worked with the real estate community, we worked with stakeholders at working groups in key informant interviews, and so all of these affected our thinking and created very local inputs into the model. The team thought it was important to understand how STRs are part of the composition. The city provided parcel data that we incorporated into a geographic information system. Included in that was great stuff with water usage and associated bills for properties. Some properties, such as apartments, share a meter and so weren't included. Data from the assessor provided information on tax billing addresses. Using these data, a decision rule was made that if a 3-month bill for the winter months was at least 50% of the summer month, this is the water bill, then we considered those to be stable, that if at least 50%, because we know that, and we were warned by all kinds of people to be careful about using the water data, because we know that people have pools and water their lawns and other things, and so we wanted to be careful. Some here might argue we should have used 40%, some 60%. We used our best guess on this. And so we tried to understand the difference between parcels that were seasonal and parcels that were stable. Using these data, again, we created this decision rule of the 50%, other considerations in categorizing how residences were used, including whether a taxpayer lived at that address or not, whether the taxpayer lives in South Haven but not at the water bill address, or whether the taxpayer lived outside the city. So what we found is from non-STRs that 36% had taxpayers who lived at the address and water usage was year-round. So they appeared to be, was stable. They appeared to be year-round permanent residents. Taxpayer lives at the address, but the water was seasonal. That was 21%. We thought those might be snowbirds. Taxpayer lives in South Haven, but not the address, and water usage is stable. I won't speculate on what that is, but it appeared to be something of a permanent resident, 6%. Taxpayers live outside the city, but water usage at the house is stable. Again, I can't speculate because I don't have data on what that 10% is, but look to be permanent residents. And taxpayer lives outside of the city, but the water usage was what we called seasonal, was 28%. And so those were what we would probably guess to be second homeowners. So in the identified database, at least permitted, were 662 parcels. Total usable units were 2,495. So when we broke these down using the approach we just suggested, 38% were stable, 35% were seasonal, and 27% were short-term rentals. And part of the reason that we thought about this was from our stakeholder groups about how to think about the communities and their concern. So looking at housing data for 2022, the summary statistics, in the city of South Haven, there were 301 sales. The median sale price, that means of that 301, about the 150th or the 151st was about $370,000. The other were below it or above that number. The average price was $476,000. So that clearly skews to the right if you think about that distribution from the median. When there's that much difference between a median and a mean price, it means that there's a lot pulling that up in the value of homes in the city. Not anything that's surprising you, I'm sure. Total volume of sales was about $143 million in 2022. This is the housing units by sales, by price brackets over time from 2016 to 2022. And what you really see is a shift in the market, at least in the number of units, to be increasingly expensive. Again, sometimes the best social science research reveals the obvious. I'm telling you what you already know, but these are the data. And this is kind of the study period that we were able to work in, depending upon what question we are working in. But we see this. And if you go to the next slide, I think this is maybe the potentially more interesting one. This is the share. And so all of these total, each year totals to 100%. And you really do see that shift from below 250, much higher, much fewer as you go forward, and really starting to move into those higher price values. And so this was important for us to understand in setting the baseline. The next slide. And I think this really summarizes the shift in South Haven between 2016 and 2022 is a really shift from the left to the right in pricing and increasing. And again,
So, in summary, you could say from these couple slides that town is no longer an affordable town for many people. The affordability of housing in our town is a real problem, because if you look at the blue, it has shrunk considerably from 16 to 22. Is that a fair conclusion? Not just the house prices have gone up, the affordability has gone way down for a lot of people in this town.
I want to be careful in rendering any opinion on that. It is clear that the price is going up. I don't know about the affordability, although we are about to look at the wages, and so I want to be the earnings. I think that's the next slide. And so this may support your contention. So this is for the two primary big census tracts in the city. The data source is Claritas. It's a data source used by economic developers and site selectors across the country. And so if you look at this and you get to this point, and I think that and I would ask you to draw your own conclusion from this, but if you get to this point that you're in the $50,000 to $75,000 range, you're in the 50 to 60%, and if you use a factor of 2.5 times that, it probably indicates that many of the houses in the community probably are not affordable to those lower income people. Did I answer your question well enough?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to be really careful. So median income between these two census tracts, the big core census tracts of residents, and it's the ones that we used in the study that we presented last time I was here. Median income is between $50,000 and $75,000. Average income is about $84,000, and you'll see later on. So if you take 2.5 times that, which is the standard for that, it's about $211,000. So kind of as you review back, the market has shifted away from that sort of a price tag of a $211,000.
So in simple terms, someone that makes $100,000 can afford a $250,000 home.
I think that's the standard.
And in this town, a $250,000 home doesn't buy an average home.
Right.
So for an average person making $100,000, which some people consider a pretty good salary in this town, they can't afford to buy a home here. And I'm not trying to lead you, I'm just trying to understand this, because that seems to be what this is showing.
Right, and I would tend to agree with you. Looking at the next slide. So again, we broke this down into a couple different things. Our data sources were the city of South Haven for the number of STR rooms. AirDNA provided monthly, and thanks to stakeholders who shared that with us, monthly occupancy rates. Michigan Economic Development Corporation did visitor expenditures. And part of the team's assumption is that while we had statewide expenditures and Van Buren County expenditures, that South Haven was a bit different, based on the composition of business and other things, and you'll see that in a moment. So we did what we thought were shares of visitor spending changed to better reflect available goods and services in the city. And let me say that every time we tried to do something, we thought about it as conservatively as possible. So we're not trying to make big numbers here. We are trying to use what we think are defensible numbers. So these are the occupancy rates. One is that on the left side, the y-axis or the vertical axis is percentage of occupancy from AirDNA, and then on the other side is based on 1,130 rooms. It's the daily number of visitors at 1.5, and so that's why if you look up there, it's like almost 1,600. You'll say there's 1,130 rooms. We used 1.5 people as our core per room. We think that may be low, but we felt it was better to go on the conservative side. And so in that period, when you have 91% occupancy in July, it's 1.5 times the 1,130 at 91%. Next slide, please. So how does this all play out in the end? If you look at this, January 33% occupancy, February 41%. You'll say Roby 33%. Again, that's a big number. In July, we know, but from everybody that I've heard, both internally and people I've talked to that were in South Haven in January and February, the weeknights were not busy and the weekends were very busy. And so it shifts over.
Wouldn't you, because I didn't see it in here, but maybe I missed it, wouldn't you also want to know what the occupancy rates were in our hotels and motels? Because hypothetically, I don't know this to be the case at all, the realtors would know much better than me, but if we're shifting a whole lot of people from hotels and motels, which they have their company's savings all invested in that building, and shifting them short-term rentals, then yeah, we're filling up 91% in July, August. But if the hotels are at 50% or 60%, they're dying, because if they don't make it in the summer, just like a short-term rental, they're not going to make it. So how do we know if we're ahead, I guess, is the question.
Honestly, that wasn't the question that we were asked to consider. We were asked to look at the STRs, but we heard from stakeholders that your hotels, are, particularly citing 91%, are full in the summer. So you'll see in the report, we kind of say that we believe that occupancy is high in all those periods of time. So, but wasn't the question that we were engaged to consider. So you look down, and so, you know, some might argue 33% occupancy rates are high in January. As I looked at this, I thought 91% was maybe a little bit low in July and maybe in August. But these were the numbers that we had to work with. The team comes from an evidence-based research background. These were the data that we had. Again, the number of persons per room were 1.5. We could have, and we did some sensitivity analysis with 2.5 and others that you'll see in the report. But for brevity tonight, we wanted to get to this. We estimated, using these types of data and this algorithm, for lack of a better phrase, about 340,000 visitors through the year to South Haven. The average statewide expenditure was $179. According, and this is from Michigan Economic Development Corporation, it was 37% in Michigan for accommodations, 25% for essentially restaurants and bars, 14% for retail, 11% for amusement and recreation, and 11% for transportation. So we kind of as collectively came up with this, and this is a very conservative estimate. We pushed a lot of this into accommodations, which is not entering into the model because that's taken care of in the operations and maintenance component. And so what we were really looking at is visitor spending. And so we did what we call damping down the visitor spending. And so while retail was 14% in Michigan, it was 10% here. Transportation was 11% in Michigan. You don't have an airport. I mean, you don't have a DTW type of an airport. And so this really is a fairly conservative, and we moved from the accommodations share of that $179 from 37 to 60%. So we really kind of came in very conservative on this. Looking at the next slide. So in the end, when you kind of take the previous slide and the slide before that and you intersect them, you get about $17 million in eating and drinking estimated spending. It's almost $7 million in retail estimated spending, amusement and recreation about $2 million, gasoline about $620,000, and other transportation $137,000. Total expenditures were estimated just under $27 million. So what was the impact of that? Well, when we put this into in-plan, we had 135 jobs. Now, these are annualized jobs. We know that in the summertime, there's more than 135 people at full-service restaurants. You can see what these are. Again, it adds about $7.5 million in additional income into the city from the STR component. So then we looked at the operations side of the spending. These are expenses owners are estimated to incur annually in operating and maintaining STRs. They include but aren't limited to house cleaning, lawn care and snow plowing, repair and maintenance of building packages, and startup costs. Estimates are for expenditures within the city. We used some survey data for that, and it was clear asking where you spent money within the city and outside of the city. What we found, what we had based on the survey data compiled from rental homeowners and property management groups, you can see here. The one that may give you a moment of pause, as it did us, is startup costs, but keep in mind these are average costs. And so someone might have a lot in one year and not in another. And so in the end, it was about $28,000 per STR. Permitted STR, we know some will spend less than that, some will spend more, thus the nature of averages. Total annual expenditures were about $18.8 million. The result of that was in the next slide, about 108 jobs. These are annualized. We felt these were less seasonal, while we know that some will be cleaning staff and others, that a lot of the maintenance and repair, construction and other things will be throughout the year. Added income of about an additional $4.7 million.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
You're not implying these are incremental jobs, are you? Because hypothetically, and I don't know this to be the case, but if short-term rental didn't exist, a lot of homeowners use outdoor maintenance for their yards. A lot of them have private
Let me
cleaning.
go to the next section if I could,
So-
and this might answer your question for you.
Okay.
So we thought about this, actually, Councilman, we thought about this as what's the alternative uses? And we found a way to think about this. And so for every policy decision, there's an opportunity cost. And for this research, there are costs and benefits of alternative uses that instead of the places that are permitted as STRs. But unfortunately, we don't have an average expenditure for residents of South Haven to model. And so here's how we did it. We divided property values, assessed values, into quintiles, meaning 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and 100%. We took the median of those quintiles, and we then, using that 2.5, or where for each, we looked at the 40% value, we took the assessed value, multiplied it by 2. That's the best we could do. We know that sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but it was the best we could do. We multiplied it by 2.5 times household income. And so that gave us 133. So if we go to the next, you'll see that the household income based on assessed value was the midpoint for the first quintile was about 58,000. The second was about 96,000. The third was about 130, then 170, and finally 286. That created a set of total income of about an additional 197 million in the city. Then kind of this was the team's best estimate of how those properties would be used. So permanents were people who lived here 24/7, 365. Snowbirds were here 6 months, and seasonals were here 3 months. That was multiplied out, and so that 97, based on the fact that there are times that snowbirds and seasonals aren't here, was about $60 million. I think the next slide tells a little bit about, oh, so that gets entered in. InPlan has the ability to estimate by wage brackets local expenditures. And so that kind of goes to your question is, if they weren't permitted as STRs and someone lived in them, or this existing kind of occupancy patterns for non-STRs in the city, this is the type of jobs that would be created. Based on that, it was about additional income of about 1.3 million and about 36 jobs. So if we continue on, so what are the net impacts of all of this? We found from visitor spending about 305 jobs, operations spending about 108 jobs, so a total from permitted STRs, as we estimated it, it's about 413 jobs for about 12.2 million in income, less alternative uses if they were just as residences, and I don't mean to, that sounds almost pejorative, not intended to be, but if they were not STRs with visitors, but residences, it'd be about 36 additional jobs. So those are the people that are getting lawn services and maintenance and those sorts of things. So that reduces that down to 377 kind of net impact jobs on an annualized basis, knowing again that winter probably is less jobs than that, and summer maybe 3 or 4 times that, and about 11 million in total income when total estimated impacts are reduced by the alternative uses.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
Previous slide. The 305 jobs that were on there. Oh, sorry. Can you go back, Kate? The visitor spending is what I was wondering about. That is specifically for short-term rentals, or it's just all the visitors?
No, that was from the very first section where we went through how we estimated the visitors from STRs and room nights and occupancy and all that. That's where the 305 and the 7.5 come from.
Okay, so that doesn't include other tourism?
No, this,
Okay.
our entire question was on STRs, so we didn't veer out of that path.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So, you know, one thing that we heard about is the question of what's the economic impact of STRs on housing prices. The best way to do this is to use econometric models, commonly called regression models. The team ran 18 models to test this assumption, and I want to be very careful in reporting these results. For this study, a series of attributes were tested to see if they affected the sale price. The next slide, we looked at owner addresses, parcel in 2022, the size of the lot, the square feet of the building, the square of the square feet, the natural log of the square feet, and at some point, the team thought about some of this, and can I explain natural logs to you? I cannot. Assessed value in 2022, the square of this value, which everybody knows is times itself. The natural log of this value was the sale near an existing STR at time of sale. We heard a lot about that from stakeholders. Number of bedrooms, did the parcel become an STR 1 or 2 years after the sale? We were a bit constrained in doing this analysis because we only had data from 16 to 2022. And so if you're trying to do 2 years of regression analysis, the last year that you can run a model that includes 2 plus 2 years is 2020. We know that that was a weird year. And so I would suggest that when you see these results, don't use them as absolute value. I would use them as a directional value. And I would suggest you think about this going forward as you have more data. So we ran 16 models that didn't find anything. We were surprised by this. I was truly shocked. So we did 2 more models that were specified that did have statistically significant findings. And that's that if a property sold in year 1 and was permitted to be an STR in the year after that, so year 2 or year 0 to year 1, the price increased between $73,000 and $75,000. I want to be careful in this because we ran out of time. As I mentioned, we always want to keep exploring this. We started to use what are called a series of dummy variables for time. That still gives a very large number in the 40s, but we found that some of that bled off based on the fact that if you were looking at 2021 and 2022, that some of that additional value went into those sorts of things, into the additional years. Not statistically significant in the model, and I think sometimes it's important to remember that you find things that are no's. In this case, we spent a lot of time modeling from the centroid, the middle of a parcel, 150 feet from that sale point. Was there an STR permitted? That was not significant. And so we were, I honestly was a bit surprised by that. The other thing that was really interesting and not significant was that if something was permitted as an STR in year 2, while not significant, it had an inverse side to the first one. So it was a negative. And so again, take these to be indicators, but not, I wouldn't go to the paper tomorrow and say $73,000. Clearly, there is an impact there. I think more research should be done as you get better data. But it is not a small amount, particularly if you think about the fact that 376,000 was the median and 470,000. I mean, it's a big chunk of that. And so it does yield that. Sir.
So you just said more data, it would be good to have more data and more studies. And I'm not trying to bait you, and I'm not trying to say you're right or wrong. But I look at other studies, and I have one right here called the Economic Policy Institute, Washington, D.C., and this says, and I'm quoting it, rising housing costs are a key problem for American families, and evidence suggests that the presence of Airbnb short-term rentals raises the local housing cost. And then it goes through all this other information. The potential benefit of increased tourism supporting city economies is much smaller than commonly advertised. So for the average resident, for me sitting up here in city council, I don't have the answers, but I find it confusing because common sense on one hand tells me if you take a lot of homes out of the market, and it says here home purchasing is inelastic, means it's going to be there. They just have to figure out a way to buy it. So if it's inelastic, people are going to buy them regardless, and we take the supply out and make them short-term rentals, then the existing houses that are left, the prices are going to go up. Or is that?
Let me respond if I could. First of all, EPI is a think tank that has a bias in their research, so I'm not surprised by their findings. You'll see as we conclude here that I warn not to use this model anywhere but South Haven because I think you're a unique place. If we go back, and please don't, but if we go back, you'll see that the distribution of housing is also driven by permanent residents, it's driven by second home owners, it's driven by lots of things. And so I'm just careful. I think these numbers are valid, but it's not the only thing driving the price here. Your proximity to Chicago, your proximity to your amenity values and other things, I think drive it. So I would not take a unique place like South Haven and use an EPI, a think tank with a bias to what they're doing, and apply that there, if that's. So I guess I've offered an opinion, which I intended not to do tonight, but.
I hear what you're saying,
I agree.
but it's happening
Makes sense.
all over the country. This isn't unique to South Haven.
Actually, if you'll see in the lit review that there's very little in the literature showing large changes in STRs driving local prices. So the literature, and you'll see it in the report, and then I'm glad to chat with you about it. I think that's one report from a think tank with a bias.
Okay.
I'm sorry? Okay, so some caveats. All models are a combination of art and science. We try different ways to look at this. These models used available data and available attributes. If other people had other data and other attributes, that might be things. You know, since I've taken the team has taken a very academic approach to this, I want to comment that I don't think this is generalizable outside of the city of South Haven. I think that the data that you have, that the amenities that you have, the location you have, and other things, you have a significant share of second homeowners, you're proximate with access to a number of metro areas and other things. I would not take this and use this exact same model in Kalamazoo or somewhere else that had a different kind of economy. And I think that's part of my dilemma with the EPI thing, but I've not read their research. Summary findings, the market for housing prices has shifted over time, as we've agreed. The median income in South Haven lies between $50,000 and $75,000, rounding up. Average household income is estimated at about $84,000. Using a 2.5 factor of income, that suggests a price of about $211,000. In 2022, the median price was $370,000, and the average price was $476,000. Next, estimates based on 1,130 rooms. The team reallocated spending by MEDC. This estimates using annual expenditures to be just under $27,000. Estimates of impacts from visitor spending about 305. Annualized jobs, we break those down, some seasonality in the report, just under or just over 7.5 million in annualized income. Estimates for operation are based from survey data extrapolated to all STRs. Total expenditures are estimated about 18.8 million, all in the city. At least that was the expectation based on the survey responses. Employment of about 108, income of about 4.7 million. The next slide looks at the opportunity cost. The but-for of these being STRs was estimated using income quintiles. Income was estimated in the city at just over or just under $60 million. That created employment of about 36 with local spending, keeping in mind that probably a lot of spending bleeds out of the city, and income at 1.35 million. The next slide, all in, the net impact is about 377 jobs on an annualized basis and about 11 million in income. I think there's one or two more. So we looked at how STRs affect housing prices. We used econometrics, parcels.
Yeah, I wanted to know, can I ask a question? I guess I'm getting a little confused. I was going back to the slide where you said the median income was 50 to 75,000, and I wanted to know, where did you get those numbers from?
Claritas. I cited them earlier.
Mm-hmm. So, is that the entire population of South Haven, or is that just, are those numbers including people who are living here part-time?
Those are the same as you would find if you looked at the American Community Survey, only they're more forward estimated by Claritas. So it's the same data that would be in the American Community Survey for residents, I believe.
Okay, so in simple terms, you're saying that because all the stuff you're saying, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I just want to know the numbers that you're giving us. Those numbers are coming from local people who live here full-time. That's all I want to know.
Which I'm sorry, I don't
When you
understand.
say the median income is 50 to 75,000, I just want to know, are those numbers?
That's the median, so half the people in that census tract, in those two census tracts, earn below that and half above.
I understand median.
Okay.
I'm saying, are those people from the numbers that wherever you got these numbers from, are these people living in South Haven full-time? Because I'm trying to understand, if you're saying that.
Let me find out. I don't know the answer.
Because if the average age is 60 years old, that's not making sense to me. So that's why I'm trying to understand where these numbers are coming from.
I guess what I'm saying is let me check and see how census defines it, and I will respond back to you. I don't want to mislead you with the wrong answer.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling.
Well, it's a combination, though, of, I mean, maybe she's trying to go backward and just explain where that, like, the census data and whatnot. I mean, I don't know if that's, I mean, I think maybe that's where she's driving it.
And Mayor, what I'm saying is I don't know if those just full-time residents or if that includes part-time residents. I don't know the composition of that in the ACS data, the American Community Survey data, which this is based on.
Gotcha.
I'm glad to
See if it's out there. Sure.
I backed us up to slide 42. I think we're on 45 again. I think we just got here.
So this is what we are looking at with how STRs, permitted STRs affect housing prices. Again, it could be as high as $75,000. Other work we've done still shows it to be significant and a large amount, but in the 40,000s. Again, a caution applies to South Haven and the generalizability of these models. And I think, thanks for the opportunity to partner with the city, in particular staff, were very, very helpful. Not only leadership and Kate and everybody, but particularly Ryan was constantly supporting us with questions. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Thanks to the stakeholders who provided inputs. Hopefully you saw your influence in how we thought about this. And thanks for meeting with the team.
So what is your conclusion about short-term rentals for our city? In a couple sentences, what would you say?
That they appear to affect housing prices, and they appear to increase the number of people living here, number of people working here, number of jobs with increased income.
With what?
Increased income. Because we looked at visitor spending, operations spending, netted out if these weren't STRs and came to so that's, I guess, where I would come into this at.
You know that's very different than your own report. And I know last time you discarded that, the Upjohn Institute, and it's very different than what I've read from Jim Hedinger, who's sitting here. And I can quote your own report. It said the worst thing that could happen in this town is to become solely a beach town. And it went on and talked, and I can quote from your own report how summer jobs are not sustainable and at the price of homes. Bottom line is this, and I'm not trying to debate you, is that this town, the focus has to be on the people that live here above everything else, the quality of life for the residents. And that is the concern with short-term rentals. And I'm not drawing a conclusion, good or bad, about short-term rentals. There's so much that can be talked about. But the bottom line of all this is, what is this doing to the year-round permanent residents? Because everything that should be done economically should be helping businesses and should be helping the year-round residents. That's in your own study. And I got the page open that says it.
And looking at, Kate, I apologize, I don't have, so if you go to the categories of housing, it's, yeah. And Councilman, I'm not here to debate you, I'm just here to present that 36% of taxpayers live and the water usage is stable. 21% live at that address, the water usage is seasonal. You may be able to add the 6% and 16 and the 10% to 16% that the water usage is stable, but only 28%, so 1 out of 4, the water usage is seasonal, and these are not STRs. These are the composition of housing that isn't STR. So, you know, I think you'll draw your conclusions, but the reality is that that there's a distribution of housing types here, and when you go to I believe it's the next slide, Kate. Short-term rentals are 27%, or about a quarter of the housing. And let me just say that they were permitted short-term rentals. Are they short-term rentals? We did not validate that. So that this is driven by stable and seasonal people also.
I would say this, last comment. I have never lived any place in my life, and I've lived in big cities, small towns, and I think this is true for a lot of people, where 1 out of every 4 of their neighbors are short-term rentals and aren't there most of the year. It is just a hard thing for people to accept. And I was hoping to finally get some definitive information that would help us make a decision, because I want to help the community. And a lot of people are very concerned about the quality of their life living here. And that's not criticism of short-term rentals or the realtors trying to do it. It's a fact of life. There is real concern about the quality of life. And it says in your report that you partook of. In short, the greatest challenge facing South Haven is not to become solely a beach town. And short-term rentals work that direction. And I could quote Jim in his report. And it's worrisome for all of us in this room.
But
Yeah.
if I can just return to, we were engaged to estimate the economic impact, and that's
Right.
what we've done.
And you've done that, and we appreciate it. And again, because that's a whole nother debate, because I think you brought it up. We're very seasonal. We have been very seasonal, and that's been occurring for decades. I mean, there are a variety of factors. We all know what they are, whether you mentioned Chicago, you mentioned obviously the lake, the amenities. We had 0% interest for a bunch of years, and as a result, half of America's bought a second home. So we've got a housing problem. And I think somewhere in here, I read it earlier, but I mean, we have a lack of, we have been building, and this is again, not just South Haven, this is the US of A. We're not building enough homes in those price ranges for those, those starting out. So
And I'm not rendering an opinion here, but just as we work across the country in these things, it's very difficult for builders to build those homes at $150,000 because it's $200 to $250 a square foot now to do it, and that just doesn't make it affordable.
Right. And that's just the market we're in. And we've had those discussions. We've asked the builders, can you build it for this? And they just shake their head and go, no. And again, you also have issues where people are they're building what they can sell.
Right.
Which, let the market be aware. So how about, if it would please the council, we'd like to get some public comments done. Maybe take a little break in a minute so we can get moving? Sound good, everybody?
Yes.
Public questions, comments? Try to balance it. Just come on up, state your name and address. You'll have up to 5 minutes, and then we will.
Danielle Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard, permanent resident here for 6 years. One of your slides showed the impacts on housing prices, and you stated that what you found was not statistically significant. STRs within 150 feet of the property or permitted in year 2. My comment would be that when someone goes to buy a house, it is not evident that there is an STR within 150 feet. They do not have large signs out front. You have to know to look for that little permit in the front window. So when someone goes to look at a house and all the houses are empty or dark in that neighborhood, they just assume everybody's out to dinner, and 4 of those 6 houses are STRs. So I think that that's a statistic that probably is not very accurate, because I didn't know that there were STRs in my neighborhood. They don't look any different than any other house except the ones that are ginormous.
Thanks for your comments. Next. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Allison Furman. I'm with Representative Joey Andrews' office. We were just reaching out to let everyone know that our office is open, and we would love to have you reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. And then additionally, we do have a couple legislative updates if those are okay to share.
We're actually in the middle of a discussion on rentals, sorry.
I'm so sorry, I heard public comment and thought it was time for anyone
Sorry.
to get up. That is my
Sorry.
bad.
And if that ever happens, just catch us before the meeting. We could have put you right at the start.
Yeah.
Sorry. My bad. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening. Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. All due respect, this report, I don't know where to start. You have already seen my email. A couple of you responded. Oops, I just lost it. Excuse me. The report missed a lot of things, as far as I'm concerned. On page 89, the estimated annual expenses needs to be revised. The author shows that STR maintenance and repairs are $3,300 approximately, and startup costs are $6,998. there are a lot of STRs that are brand new. And yet I'd like to see the stats to show me that they're spending $17,000 to get their STR ready and get it permitted. My son even had an old house, his old STR, on Clinton Street, and he didn't pay more than a couple $1,000s to get it ready. And it's an 1896 home. And the maintenance fees, those seem reasonable to me, okay? Okay, and they will spend maintenance to on every year. The author further states that STRs have no impact on housing prices, but in the beginning of his report, but then at the end he says $75,000. Well, I hate to argue with you about that, but just yesterday, I think there was a house posted, three bedroom, 1 bath, for $464,000, and was only appraised last year at $200,000. So that's just one example. My neighbor's house that he sold a year and a half ago, he bought it for $425,000. He sold it for $650,000. Now these, my Trailside COA has 8 rentals out of 17, 18 right now, okay? And those things rent for $6,000, $7,000 a month, okay? So, and it's affecting the housing costs, like Joe says, people cannot buy houses in this town. And the pressure from out-of-state people buying STRs and building STRs. Let's look at the McMansions, Monroe Boulevard. That's probably a $4 million house down the street from Joe, okay? There's those houses over by me, $830,000 on Elkinburg. The one on the corner is the 3-bedroom house on St. Joe and Elkinburg. And that's going to be a rental, okay? The numbers, you really have to look at all the new rentals, all the houses were built in the last couple of years, and you'll find that most of them are STRs. And they're McMansions. They're not $250,000, even $400,000 houses. They're $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million, and even higher than that. I'm sure the house on Erie Street, 300 Erie, is probably $2 million. That's a big house. And there's a couple of them over in Engel, one of them that took a small house and they renovated, and then now it's 3 or 4 times bigger than what it was. Okay? So, and I'm sure that's probably going to be a rental, okay? The rentals are taking over the city. And I would really like to see this report be more factual, okay? The numbers. The numbers on the alternate uses doesn't make any sense to me. You have 38 employees for alternate use. You had 108 for STR. Now, and you missed 2 lines on your alternate use. You had nothing in there for services, building services, not 1 line. You didn't have a line for landscape and other services. And there's 0 there. So if you use, and also the number is not correct, there's 900 STRs, not 600 when you count all the condo associations, okay, and PUDs. If you take that number and you got to multiply, you got to multiply those numbers by the significant things in your thing. There are, you'd say 1 doctor or 1 sports store or something like that for alternate use. People still have their houses clean. People still have their grass cut. They still have it mowed in the wintertime. They spend money on maintenance, okay? That wasn't in your report. And let's make it factual here, okay? The numbers don't add up, okay? The fact that alternate use people, there's 900 people that would be here all year round, and I think those numbers are very low. They're only like one half or 1/3 of what you're getting from supposedly these people that are for STRs, okay? That doesn't make any sense. Those numbers should be a lot higher. And your employment number, if you really did the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, instead of being 38 employees, it's probably going to be 100. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Going once, going twice.
Joe Wilkins. Certainly I agree with everything that's been said. 811 Indiana Street. Just a couple of quick comments. I was kind of lost with the numbers too, like Councilwoman Wilkins stated with the average wages. That kind of threw me off too. But I want to first say, I thought someone requested in our previous meeting for Mr. Roby's partner to be here and to assist in the presentation.
Mr.
George.
Roby's a partner lives in North Carolina, so he wasn't going to be able to come up here. But we have Mr. Roby here. Mr. Roby is Roby Analytics, so.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have George to accompany him on tonight, but with all due respect to you, Mr. Roby, I think Councilman Reeser kind of didn't push the envelope, but to me, in the presentation, you come across as being fact, data-driven, neutral. But I've sat in 2 meetings where whenever your numbers or your data is challenged, I get a different feeling whenever someone challenges your findings. And I must admit, and all due respect to you, I was a little taken back and bothered by someone of your, or in your position to challenge the data and report from someone else's work. I was a little bothered by you pretty much discrediting the whole report. So it bothers me when we keep getting people come in and you get all this information, all these different spins on it. But the fact of the matter is STRs are driving or hurting the affordability of housing. That's the fact. Another fact is that South Haven is a liar, and I know I don't want to get off course. We're an outlier when it comes to STRs. And so all these different reports, what it don't show is, I think, what STRs are doing to our neighborhoods. It's not showing how it's affecting the quality of life. And so, yeah, we sit here and we see these different reports. We've heard report after report after report. But if we really want to get serious to try to help with affordable housing and put our arms around STRs, I would challenge everyone in this city, voting residents in this city, when the next election come up, to put people on these council, on this board, to be mindful of who you vote, because it doesn't seem like these reports are going to help us at all. So I would challenge anyone that's a voting resident in this community, if you really want to save this neighborhood, and you really want to slow this train down some, when election time comes, think about who you allow to sit in these seats. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Joe. Anybody else?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I have to echo what Dan and Bishop Wilkins said. The presenter indicated that it's evidence-based research. They're all evidence-based research background. But at one point, he said that the numbers were not verified. Critical numbers were not verified. So to help with independent evaluation of these results, which I do question, and I'll wait until the full report is out, because I don't like to just opinionate on things that are not complete. But to help evaluate all these numbers, I would hope that this report will have a substantial appendix. The 12 months of water usage that were relied upon, the data from the city assessor that was relied upon, the taxpayer inhabited homes information that was relied upon, the 662 units that were identified for STR, the estimated 2022 household income, the City of South Haven number of STR rooms, the occupancy rate from AirDNA, the spending report from MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation South Haven team estimate, and other sources. The survey data that was mentioned during the presentation. The sources for which the information was on slide 24, 27, and 28 with regard to employees and things like that. And here's my list for you to have. You can reference that. And along the lines, you say certain things cannot be quantified. The impact on neighborhoods cannot be quantified. I beg to differ. Oh, sorry. There we go. We have 77 Clinton. That's an STR, and that had a huge overbuild contrary to the variances that were granted, and the owners litigated against us. Staff spent who knows how many hours coming up with a memo to cover the mistakes that they made that resulted in the litigation. And then we had to pay $78.5 thousand for the errors that allowed that big bill to go. That significantly impacts the immediate neighbors because a garage that is only supposed to be 16 feet tall now has a living quarters above it, 3 feet from the property line. And then we have 717 Kalamazoo. Well, that's only under construction. With the size of it, I have to estimate that it will be an STR if there's any permits left once it's constructed. And in that situation, the plans in and of themselves in the four corners showed that it was over the lot coverage, but it was approved. And I then got a chance to look at the documents and saw that right away because my math is pretty good. And then as I was looking at the plans, I realized that
Mary,
it
I'm just
was,
trying to keep
no,
it-
but
we're
it
coming back
is
to
about
the-
STR and impact on neighborhoods. So it is relevant, Mayor. I'd like my 20 seconds back from that interruption. So this, showed even that our staff missed the zoning ordinance and didn't even properly calculate lot coverage. So with these large homes that are more akin to STRs than for our shrinking family size, contrary to the comment that it's personal and subjective, the numbers indicate that it's objective and that there is a significant impact on the city. We've had who knows how many staff hours to address issues. We've had to engage outside counsel for litigation in circuit court. And so, yes, I think it does matter who sits up there. And I hope that there's more focus on the voting registered voters for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening.
Evening.
Ashley Greer, 42 Delaware Court. I just want to start out by thanking you all, council members, for commissioning this economic impact study. It's so important that we have real facts and data when making decisions that could dramatically affect the future of this community. As a South Haven resident, I was a bit shocked by not only the financial results, but also the sheer number of jobs that are brought and maintained through the support of vacation rentals and their guests. I also want to thank Roby Analytics for what I'm sure was many hours of sifting through data and meeting with various stakeholders within South Haven. I hope the obvious realizations that this report shows regarding the benefits vacation rentals bring to this community will help change the negative narrative that often consumes public forums and social media. Now that we have both quantitative and qualitative data, I look forward to sitting down with members of this community from all viewpoints to move forward in the best way for our residents, for our business owners, for our property owners, and for our visitors. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
Hello, Carrie Weber, 606 Maple Street. I just wanted to make a couple comments. I know quite a few times in the presentation, people were saying, oh, the STRs are driving up. I'm not going to put my head in the stand and say that they never do, but we also have to keep in mind across the country. My first house was in Battle Creek, Michigan. It was under $100,000. Today it's over $200,000. Battle Creek, not a good environment that you want to raise your kids in, and I promise you that there's a lot more neighborhood issues in that area than there are in here. So I wanted to say that, but I also, I have been following this for the last couple years, and I just think that there's so much as leaders and community that we can put into working together. And if we took all of our time gathering all the Freedom of Information Act, looking up everybody's house stats, fighting back and forth, trying to make, this person is in their house this much more time than this person. If we just put that to good use and started looking at how we can affect our community in a positive way together, how we can affect our youth and our schools, keeping the kids in schools and different things, it's not just the short-term rentals. 48% of our regular residents are not in their houses. They're dark half the year. So, when we look at that, I know it sounds great to put it all on the short-term rentals, that our neighborhoods are dark because of that, but if those houses sell and they're near the lake and they're high amounts, you've already seen that the income levels of some of the people that we want to affect are not at that level. So maybe we need to focus on how do we get our youth to be able to afford the jobs to afford our houses in this environment, and also, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I just think we need to look at things as broader, and it's not always South Haven. We tend to look at that and say, oh, it's South Haven. I've been hearing it from friends across the country. They can't afford houses. Youth can't afford houses anywhere anymore. So I think we really need to keep all that in mind as well and see how we can work together to make this place a better, and my family's here more than some of the people on the council that are long-term residents. So I think we need to start seeing the value in people and how we can work together. And I'm a short-term rental owner. I know that, yes, you used to be able to furnish a short-term rental with garage sale furniture and they would rent just fine. That doesn't happen anymore. People have to put top-of-the-line things in there and spend the money on their rentals. So I love it that community members have an opinion, but if they're not in this space, they don't know the amount of money that's put into these homes to keep them in good shape. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Is there anybody else? Good evening, Ms. Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Sukup, 1970 68th Street. Just wanted to clarify one thing. I'm a proud realtor in South Haven, have been for over 20 years. We can tell if something is a short-term rental. So when we go to sell a house, we can look up if it's permitted. Now, we can't tell if that permit is being used or not, but we can tell if it's a short-term rental. If somebody tells me that they would prefer to live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of short-term rentals, then I'm going to direct them in that direction. I'm going to send them in that direction. Of course, we don't want to try, we can't discriminate or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody who doesn't care. Most people really don't have an opinion on it when they're going to buy a house. Do I have this documented? No, I do not. But this is from years of experience. So I just wanted to let you know, we can tell what's a short-term rental. If somebody asks me, are there short-term rentals on either side of me, I can look it up and I can tell. Okay? And thank you for putting that in the building permit online so I can tell. It's easy. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about the impact study? If not, going once, going twice. All right. Council, any other comments before we roll on or questions?
I've got a couple, one comment,
go
one
ahead.
question.
Fine.
So one thing, on a positive note, I thought it was an innovative approach to use water usage to try to determine the stability of a property. I thought that was a good,
I agree.
good innovative approach that you took there on that.
Can I just comment? And I want to thank the city for that because we started thinking about electric use and that sort of thing. Oh, sure. We started using electric use and then realized that that could be much more variable. And through conversations, particularly with Ryan, we started looking at water usage, although we were very careful and we actually started looking at water usage per person, but then we're kind of waved off because of pools and water, lawn and sprinkling and all that sort of thing. But thanks for the compliment. It was actually, I think, part of the partnership.
One Jim, one thing I think about when I think about the economic impact of short-term rentals is property taxes. And I know that's impacted by a lot of things as far as like, you know, if a property is sold recently or is not sold recently. But I wonder, did your group consider looking at that from an impact of, like, you know, less short-term rentals could mean less or more homestead properties, which could reduce the number of property taxes. I was just curious if your group had thought about that at all.
Gosh, you know, we thought of this as a traditional economic impact analysis, but kind of based on the RFP from the city, which is kind of, you know, build, operate, visitors, counterfactual. No, I apologize. We didn't think about that.
No worries. That's it. Thank you.
My question was, I remember you said, at some point you got to write the report, and if we gave you more time, you could. But what I'm wondering is, can you, with the data that you have, narrow your scope to the city? Like you use 49090, you could get a little tighter on the city and the impact on that this had on the city. When you get, obviously not right now, you're not going to pull it out of your hat, but you know, when you get your final draft together.
Well, the final draft is almost ready to go.
Okay.
That said, let me look into that and see, you know, we talked about using D&B data, Dun & Bradstreet data, but the problem with that is the employment estimates are often problematic, and the model, the closest the model could get was not to the city, but to the zip code. Let me think about that. Let me get this report to you all so you can look at it and share it, and let me think about if there's a way to allocate. The problem is we don't have, there's some data called QCEW data, quarterly sensitive employment wages. We can't get to those data, but that's where people report their employment from to the state for unemployment comp stuff. We can't get to that. So trying to allocate in and outside of the city limits for 49090 is really difficult. But we've talked about it. We just didn't have a good methodology for it, but let me, you know.
Keep looking.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, just one final comment. And I'm sorry, miss, I don't know your name, but when you got up and spoke, I couldn't agree with you more. I think there is a compromise to be had, and I think at some point, if we can get city council to have an open discussion, we could find a middle ground where short-term rentals can exist in this town and prosper, where tourism can continue to grow, where we all can live together and enjoy this town. So I think it is possible. The other thing, I just want to leave you one thought. While we talk about the number of short-term rentals, that's one issue. The biggest issue I hear over and over again in my ward is the fact that short-term rentals are businesses. They are LLCs. I owned one. I still have one. Limited liability is just like incorporating, except it's a lot less expensive and it's easier. But it is a business, so make no doubt about it. When you put a short-term rental on a residential street, you have put a business right on somebody's street. Every short-term rental in this town is a business. That is the upsetting part for a lot of people. And you can cut this any way you want. You can have the number of short-term rentals decreased, increased, but they are still putting businesses on residential streets. No different than if my neighbor wanted to own a barber shop next to my house. That's a business, they can't do it. But for some reason, we have allowed short-term rentals to be in residential streets. That has got to be addressed. But I do think, back to your point, we can do this nicely without everyone being at each other's throats. And I'd be more than willing to talk to anyone. I said it last time, I'll say it again. We can bring everybody together and get this solved. But we have to have the discussion, a fair, open discussion. That's it.
I just wanted to thank you for the data you presented. I guess I had hoped, and I am understanding it's not in the scope of this particular study, but I really wanted to see what the impact on our schools, hospitals, even things like gentrification of our neighborhoods is with short-term rentals being at the level that they are in our town. And then social fabric was a big issue that I think we still haven't fully addressed. So I appreciate the data that you shared. I wish we could address some of these points as well.
Just, go ahead. Yeah, fire.
Councilperson, I've been thinking about your question on the residency thing, and I believe that there's a period, and I just didn't want to give you the wrong answer. I wasn't avoiding your question. I believe there's a specific period, date or something like that, which census thinks about this. And so if you're let me be careful, if you're a student in Ann Arbor, given everything of this last week, I didn't want to, but if you're a student in Ann Arbor, you're not a resident of South Haven, even though your parents are, even though you're really a permanent resident here. But I want to validate that. And so I wasn't avoiding the question. I just wasn't certain of the answer. And if, as an evidence-based person, that if I say it's X and it's really Y, then you say, well, he's wrong here. So I just want to be certain, but I will get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Just for fun, talk a little bit about the in-plan model.
So there's probably three kind of major economic impact models. One is RIMS 2, which comes from the federal government. It's a paper model, and you run it. The in-plan model is what's called an input-output model. You spend money, and there are things that are bought. And that's kind of, it's an electronic model. I could do 49090, 15 zip codes together, a state, a county. So it's a pretty good model. Then there's, when I was at Upjohn, we used a model from REMI, which is actually demand-driven, but doesn't usually get to small places. So is the prime model. And kind of to comment, there are bands in there that for the counterfactual analysis. We did use what we thought were estimates based on housing price of incomes. Those fit in there, and then the spending patterns of those folks are applied, and it's not us applying them, it's in-plan applying them. And so I want to be clear that if you make $60,000 to $80,000, in-plan thinks that you spend so much on housing, maybe that's 35%, I don't know the exact number, and so much on food and that sort of thing. It's when you go up in the income brackets, that's when you can have amenities, more house cleaning and lawn care and those sorts of things that I can't afford.
Fair. Well, I appreciate it. I think it's an important, I mean, we as a council asked you to kind of run the numbers. And you've run the numbers, and I appreciate that. And they may not be perfect, they may not be exactly what we all wanted to see, but at least it gives us something to factually look at. And I appreciate that, because I think we do spend a lot of time subjectively discussing ups and downs, ins and outs. We've done it many times over the past several years. So I appreciate, the data.
And Mayor, I think something that you and the rest of council asked for was something called scalability. And so in the report are 25 average permitted STRs. And so we took kind of an average of that and then estimated the impact. So if you wanted to increase or decrease the number of STRs, the number of permits for STRs, you can estimate that economic impact. And so that is in the report, is the scalability aspect of that.
Right. I mean, there's lots more to discuss here, and I know Kate and I were chatting prior to the meeting. Kind of our next step would be to actually then set up kind of a listening or a town hall of sorts to just sort of, again, air the kind of what are we looking for. I think the question would be of this council, are there thoughts, concerns that we want to see addressed, get this addressed, and hopefully just wrap it up and put it behind us. So I think that's kind of the next step for this group, is to set that meeting.
Yep, we can have some workshop dates, and we can check with everyone's availability and start to get that process scheduled, because March is here and this will be a good time. I know we have our DEI workshop on March 6th, so probably not on a council night, so we're looking at an off night, really. Typically, most of you have meetings on Monday nights. Some of you have meetings all over the week and throughout the month. So maybe Mondays are our best day, but I'm not sure what your all availability is. So we can either learn that tonight, or I can circulate an email and find your best times.
I'd say do that knowing Steve's not here.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we got all 7 of us here.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be good. All right, got nothing else? Then let's roll on. How's that sound? All right. Next, citizens. Thank you again, Jim. Appreciate it. You may sneak out if you want. You got it. Have a great night. Safe travels. Come on, I'll start talking while you're moving. Citizens in the audience will be heard on items not on the agenda, and please call us prior to the meeting. We will get you first.
Yes, next time for sure.
Perfect.
So, yeah, as I said before, I'm Allison. I work with Representative Joey Andrews, and our office is open, so please email or call us anytime. And then just a quick legislative update here. The House passed a bill package that had the budget in it, and so now there's going to be $50 million going into a housing and community development program, as well as a placemaking program. They're still finalizing details on that, but we will be sending out more information as soon as we know when those applications are going to be open.
Wonderful. Where'd you travel from tonight?
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo.
Yes,
Well,
not too far.
Safe travels back.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Thanks, Joy, for us. All right. Anybody else? Comments not on the agenda?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. So thank you for setting up the PFAS meeting on March 1st. I was just wondering if you can advise how much time will be for presentation and how much time will be left over for questions. That's not clear from the material. And also it appears, well, I would like to know if people will be allowed to ask questions at the meeting, because it appears that we have to submit them in writing, so that clarification would be appreciated. For Overton, I would like to know what the next steps with Habitat are, and will Habitat be applying for yet another round of LIHTC funding, and if so, when will that be? And has there been any more work done to understand what the issues are around the 2 underground storage tanks, and if so, what? If not, when will that happen? And what's the status of the sample collection for the analysis under the 50K Eagle grant for that site, and by when should we expect to get results for that sampling? For the recodification, I saw from the minutes that issued late today that there were 2 submissions by concerned citizens. I was one of them. I don't know who the other one was. I was wondering if you will please post that to the website, or whether you're going to require a FOIA. It would be much nicer if the city were more transparent and didn't require FOIAs. For the 2023 STR snapshot report, I would like to know when a meeting will be set up. So just for everybody's benefit, on January 16th, I had urged the city council not to accept that report because the numbers made no sense to me. 100 new homes added since the 2020 census lacked common sense and appeared factually deficient. The city provided me the list of the new homes. I went through it. I provided comments on January 24th with errors that I believe occurred. From that, so it appears, PUDs were counted, but then backed out, but there's not enough information to know if the counting was correct, if the math was accurate. The city's list said that there were 12 apartments exempt, but those 12 apartments were not exempt from the base numbers. The city manager stated that the city's attempted to duplicate my methodology and were not able to reproduce my results. I wasn't surprised, considering there have been other math issues happening within the staff, and that's why there is so many concerns about what's going on, is that we need to have the data, objective data, to pressure test the data that's coming out from staff. So on February 8th, they said that they would still meet with me, and on February 9th, I provided a list of 4 people, Councilman Reeser, Pat Gaston, who's resident of Ward 1 and ZBA, Michael Neese, who's resident of Ward 2 and on the Planning Commission, and myself, who identified what appears to be shortcomings. On February 10th, the city manager replied, there seems to be significant interest, so that a public workshop will be a better venue. On February 10th, I quickly replied saying, well, we've been asking for a public workshop on STRs, and we've yet to get one. I think that's almost a year old now. Now we hear there's going to be a workshop on the economic report. I think with all the errors that we are identifying from the city staff's efforts, a workshop of their full understanding of how the STR laws are being executed would go very far at trying to withdraw the wedge that these bad mistakes are causing in our city. And I agree. I think there is middle ground, and I fully agree that FOIA should not have to be required. But when the city puts up a brick wall reinforced with barbed wire, there's not much choice but to file a FOIA to get the data to show that there are errors in the information from the staff. So what I have found is that the building STR permit allowance seems to be based on homes under construction, which effectively increases the number of allowable permits, that the building permit application is not allowed until the home is constructed. Therefore, those constructing homes that they hope to have a business STR permit for could potentially face no available permits because they'll be all gobbled up. So the overestimate is putting current construction in a pickle because their numbers being counted towards the allowable, but they can't apply for them. And the whole process lacks common sense and just really turns the zoning ordinance into a dog chasing its tail. And drives the wedge deeper. So I think an open forum where we're not limited to 5 minutes, where we can actually say, this is how we interpret this ordinance, why are you doing this, would go much further. And it's time the elected officials hold staff accountable for reports prepared and ordinances executed.
Thank you. Was there anybody else? Oh, come on up, Joe. You're the winner.
Joe Wilkins, 811 Indiana Street. Just two quick points. I think this first one is to Kate. Are we still enforcing the setbacks and stuff in building these homes? The required setbacks and all that?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by.
Yeah, because there's a house going up on Indiana that's sitting out about 3 to 4 feet in front of their neighbor's home. And I know years ago, there was certain setbacks that homes had to be almost, if you look at these homes, they had to be in line. Are we still enforcing that?
Yes. If you want to give me the address, I will look it up.
It's right on Indiana, down the street from me. It
you
just
have a-
seemed
do you have
like
a
it's
block number,
very.
maybe?
Do
Do you have a block number or something I can look that up with?
couple of houses down from me. So I'm at 811 Indiana,
I can get
heading
back
toward,
to you
yeah,
on that.
yeah. So again, it's just bringing hardship where neighbors, they have a nice porch, they look out and can see. Now this house sticks out about 3 or 4 feet to the left, they can't even see around it. I just want to know if are we still enforcing these setbacks? These houses are being built right on the city sidewalk, inches away from the city sidewalk. So I struggle with all this zoning stuff that I'm trying to learn, but it just don't make sense to me. One other issue, and I think Mr. Reeser might have commented a little bit on it. Years ago, there was a young man cutting hair, trying to make more money on the south side of Ward 1. The city came down on him. You can't cut there. You're in a residential area. You can't start a business in a residential area. And I think I heard someone say on tonight that these STRs are businesses on residential streets. It just seemed unfair to me. It's a big zoning nightmare. And so I want to say that I have given up. I personally have given up on all these reports because it all based on who has it in their hand and how they want to interpret the information. I give up on these reports. You have you hired somebody that came here tonight that totally discredited somebody else's reports, notable reports. And so I don't even trust this report because that's the first thing they tell you not to do. Don't get up and down somebody else's work to make your work seem legit. That, I give up on it. It seems like a bunch of witch hunt, gathering of information. I will say this every time that I get up from now on. I give up on this process. You guys can have all the workshops you want. I totally give up on all these workshops and all this fact-finding information that we're doing nothing with. I want to challenge, publicly challenge, every resident, again, I'll say it again, every voting resident in South Haven, if you truly want to see a change when it comes to affordable housing and STRs, when election comes, swap out the people that are not listening to your voices, that's not concerned with what's happening in your neighborhood. STRs have been outlawed in certain parts of this city. Unfortunately, I can't afford to live in those areas. So some people think they're bad. There are a group of people that think it's bad enough that they won't allow them to be in their neighborhoods, but they have totally taken over south side of Ward 1. And so I've given up on this process. I've given up on all the data, but I have not given up on the residents of South Haven, the voting residents of South Haven. When election time comes, make sure you put in the people that are listening to your voices and concerns. I challenge every citizen, voting citizen, to do that. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I agree with everything Bob Bishop said and many things that Joe has said. We have to look at this just like he said. These are businesses. Out of the 8 STRs in my condos area, 6 of them are business STRs and 2 are personal. And 1, because they had so much trouble, because they overbooked, they had at least 8 rentals, they decided it's better to get a business STR because there's too much hassle, okay? And the biggest problem is, like Mary said, we would solve a lot of problems with STRs if the ordinances were enforced. Now, I've been talking to Griffin before, and Griff's doing a great job, but he only has him, Kelly Tungett, and Kelly to set, okay? And Kelly does more building stuff and everything like that. So you got 2 people and maybe a couple people that help out. Now, Shays does some of the inspections, but they don't go out and check parking. I think that's part of their STR admin job. So if this thing was enforced, we would lose a lot of STRs by attrition just because they don't meet codes, they don't have parking, they don't have their permits in on time. Okay, and the interpretation of whether it's grandfathered or not, that is a big problem. But it's written straight in the ordinance, and Kelly just did that last month. She explained how the grandfather rule comes in, and there's still some permits being issued that don't agree with what the rule is. Okay, we talked about this, not just STRs. We have to enforce our ordinances, and if we do it for STRs, the numbers will come down and help everybody. We're not against STRs, but just like anybody else, like Joe said, you can't have a barbershop in your resident area. Let's enforce the STRs. They're businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going on? Anybody else? Kate?
Thank you, sir. I did have an update on the Overton parcel. So I think most are aware that on January 13th, Governor Whitmer announced the list of projects that were selected to receive the low-income housing tax credit from MSHDA. The Overton redevelopment project was not selected. Our team has been in touch with the Habitat Company, who it was informed by MSHDA that the project was not fully reviewed. According to MSHDA, there was often projects do not receive a full review in any given LIHTC funding round based on the volume of projects in the round amount and the amount of funding that is available during each round, project scores and other considerations. Approximately 1/3 of all projects submitted on any given round do not receive a full review or score. Additionally, MSHDA noted concerns with the environmental report that was submitted and requested more information about the site and surrounding property. Now, that is very helpful that we have the Eagle project that is doing additional testing. Due to these issues, the project was determined not to meet the environmental threshold requirement and therefore was ineligible for an award. It's our understanding that the Habitat Company is working with MSHDA to address these concerns and prepare a competitive application for the next round this spring. And the next round will be April 1st is the deadline. Now, as we also heard from Representative Joey Andrews' office, there is other money that's coming down, but that's up to this board. Our due diligence agreement with the Habitat Company expires this August. So council will have to determine what direction to take, either pursuing another application or an alternate application with Habitat or other means. Also, I wanted to just remind everyone that we do have the March 1st Eagle Impart Town Hall that will be held 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Listiak. They do recommend that you send your comments in advance. There will be lots of people attending because you may remember that many of these residential wells are in the township, so the township residents will be also attending. So they know that there's a certain number of people that they can take comments from, so the more advanced comments they get, they can determine how best to answer them. I don't believe that they're going to have too much time for comments. It all depends on how long their presentation is, but they have a hard out at 8 p.m. So if you have specific questions you'd like them to answer, either please submit them right to us, and we can pass them along, or you can submit them right to Eagles Impart team. You may have already started to see the I-196 business loop. There might be some work construction signs going up. As a reminder, MDOT is going to be rolling in here in about a couple weeks to reconfigure and redo the intersections at Phoenix and Blue Star, as well as there will be some patching at Phoenix and Broadway. But there will be a complete intersection rebuild at Phoenix and Broadway, or Phoenix and Blue Star this April. So just be aware that they are going to be putting up a lot of work signs there. We have a job fair this Saturday, Saturday, February 25th, noon to 2 p.m. in this room. We, the city and Shays, will be here looking for seasonal help. We are looking for park enforcement, beach enforcement, parks, cemetery staff, bridge tenders, and marina staff. So we're looking for a lot of people to come on this summer. Those are my comments.
Sounds good, thanks. Any questions for Kate?
You mentioned the PFAS meeting March 1st at 6:30 at Listiak.
Yes.
Just repeating
Oh,
that for,
yes.
I'm repeating that for listeners. But then Ms. Hosley had specific questions about questions. Eagles running that meeting, so you suggest they may not take questions. They want written questions, but
They may
she
take
asked
some
11
limited
hour-
questions, but they want to make sure that they're giving a full shake to the entire community showing up. And like I said, many of the residential wells, actually all of the residential wells that have been tested are township residents. So we anticipate there should be a sizable amount of people coming from the township. So knowing that there was such a large venue, we wanted to go with the largest one we could find, which was Listiak. So if you have pressing questions, please get them in so we can
Yeah,
get
and
them
I don't want to speak for Ms. Hosley, but I think what she was getting at is that when people hear the information, they might generate questions, and so they may want to take questions. But
They are going to be
we're not
taking
running that meeting.
questions. Right.
Eagles are running that meeting, okay.
So this is Eagles meeting. We're going to help facilitate, but they have a whole panel of folks that they're bringing in. So again, it all depends on the timing, but they anticipate they will take some comments from the audience. But if there's a sizable number of people there, knowing that the team has a hard out at 8 p.m., you would submit your comments in advance.
Okay, so please send them in advance. Okay.
Doors open at 6 p.m., by the way, and they've got 30 minutes to come in. So there's a group that's using the theater, so that's why we have it from 6:30 to 8 p.m.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. City council comments. Mr. Reeser, start with you.
2 comments, and I hope I can get through this. I have a terrible chest cold. One of the top issues facing our city, as well as Michigan, is affordable housing. Every week that goes by with a lack of affordable housing in South Haven means more year-round residents, families cannot move here. Our employers cannot attract prospective employees, and our student numbers and church attendance continues to dwindle. One of our community leaders, Bishop Joe Wilkins, took it upon himself to contact the governor's office to find out what could be done, specifically how our South Haven can get some of the funds from the state for affordable housing. And I'm referring now to that extra $50 million that has come due. On Friday, February 10th, Bishop Wilkins was granted a meeting with the Governor Whitmer's West Michigan liaison executive official, Mr. Nate Engel. Also in attendance at that meeting was our state representative, Joey Andrews, and 2 city council persons, Letitia Wilkins and myself, and a resident, Mike Campbell. So we had a good mix of people. Bishop Wilkins also invited Jeff Head, the VP of Habitat, who joined the meeting virtually, not in person. The intent and the goal of the meeting was to determine if the state had any additional funds for affordable housing over and above MISHDA, which we learned at the meeting they do, and how we could get South Haven moved up on the priority list to obtain some of these funds. We explained to Nate Engel that South Haven, besides its beauty and vibrant tourism, is still a year-round community with year-round residents, employers, schools, and churches. Joey Andrews had some very interesting ideas on how to better position the numerous small West Michigan lake communities into one stronger, larger economic entity. I'm summarizing what he said as best I could remember it, but he wanted to basically take the strength of all these small towns along the coast and somehow have it as one force going to the state to try to get funds. We left the meeting more hopeful than when we started. Nate Engel, while making no promises, did tell us that the Governor Whitmer did free up additional $50 million for affordable housing. Nate is going to look into this matter further and get back to Bishop Wilkins to set up a second meeting. I want to thank Bishop Wilkins for taking the initiative to do something about affordable housing and not accept the position in our city, the position in which our city currently finds itself. I think this is an example of the intelligent, resourceful, and caring residents we have in this community. Our people are the biggest asset in South Haven. I have said it before, we're lucky to have residents who do the research to gather the facts and unify people to take action. We as a city council and the city staff should welcome and encourage our residents to speak up and provide us with information. And the only other thing I wanted to add is I would just like to say to the mayor and Kate, is there a way at some point, and I don't know if it's even possible, this whole thing with Habitat and affordable housing keeps getting pushed down, pushed back, and it's been years now. And I think some of us have lost faith in Habitat. And that's not to say they're not good, because I can't judge them. But is there ever a way to look at another company or start this process over or do something different so we can get off a dime with that property? Because it's just sitting year after year. That's
I
just
think
a
that's
thought.
part, we're under contract with them until
August.
So that's
Right.
part of what we're,
Right, you have an ongoing due diligence agreement with that company till August. I don't know the exact date right off my head, but that is something that council needs to understand is they have this agreement in place, and we've allowed an extension of that. So I think that we can absolutely talk about the future use of that property and if another application is not successful, or we can figure out what council wants to do with that.
okay, good. I think we're all there. We're all ready to see something happen on that property and move on, so I would agree. So, George?
First, I just want to say thank you to the Shays organization. This annual report, just as a reminder to us of everything Shays does for the community, so thank you for Shays. Regarding short-term rentals, the PowerPoint that we got a briefing on today is a starting point to better understand the impact STRs have on our city. I would encourage folks to wait for the final report before drawing too many conclusions. And also, let's try to focus on insights in this report and not necessarily the numbers, because I think we can get lost in the numbers, but I think the insights might prove to be more useful to us. That's all I have.
No comment.
No comment.
Well, I do have a comment. Thank everyone for coming tonight. In light of Black History Month, I wanted to read this quote. History has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. That is Mrs. Obama. That's it. Thank you.
Good comment. Yeah, just echo, good, thanks for everybody for coming, great comments tonight. As a person that gets to serve on the Shays Board, it is fun to see these men and women share their stories and go to action. And having had to pick up the phone one time and need their services, I am very supportive of police and fire in this town. That's all I mean, they're great people. So, and we're very fortunate. Like I said, there are a lot of staffing problems, even in our neck of the woods, with these services. So we are very fortunate that we've got the staff we've got. You are safe in this city, which is great. PFAS workshop, March 1, I'll say that again. And just as a parent with 3 kids in college, our thoughts and prayers go out to those parents, students, faculty at Michigan State University. So on that note, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.